Welcome to Stoic Tips. Embrace love with Stoic wisdom. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt that quiet tension, that uneasy silence that creeps in when you're truly alone? No distractions, no background noise, just you and your thoughts. Most men run from that silence. They leap from one relationship to the next, terrified of facing themselves. They cling to anyone just to avoid being alone. But here's the truth. The man who embraces that silence, he transforms. In that stillness, something powerful awakens. The noise fades. The pressure to impress, to prove yourself, to seek approval, dissolves. And what remains? Clarity, strength, self-control. The longer a man walks that path alone, not out of bitterness, but by choice, the more powerful he becomes. His mind sharpens, his standards rise, his focus becomes unstoppable. This isn't about rejecting love, it's about rejecting weakness. It's about mastering yourself, so that when you do invite someone into your life, it's not out of need, it's from a place of power. Today, we're diving into why solitude isn't something to fear. It's the foundation of becoming unstoppable. Let's begin. 1. Breaking free from approval. Seeking. Most men spend their lives chasing approval. They shape their words to avoid judgment. They silence their real thoughts to keep the peace. They lower their standards just to be accepted. And they don't even realize they're doing it. They text back too fast to seem interested. They agree to things they don't believe in just to avoid conflict. They say yes when their soul is screaming no, all because they're terrified of being disliked, ignored, or forgotten. But the man who embraces solitude, he breaks that cycle. He no longer wakes up wondering, am I good enough? Instead, he asks, do I respect myself? That shift from seeking approval to building self-respect changes everything. Because the moment you stop chasing validation is the moment you start commanding it. When you no longer feel the need to prove yourself, people notice effortlessly. When you stop asking, do they like me? You start asking, am I proud of the man I'm becoming? And here's the paradox. The less you seek approval, the more it finds you. Women sense it. They feel when a man is grounded, calm, composed, in control. Not because he's trying to impress her, but because he's focused on something far greater, himself. That kind of presence, it's magnetic. So many men live their lives desperate to be chosen. They jump through hoops. They soften their words. They shrink their standards. All for the chance that someone, anyone, might pick them. But a man who values himself, he doesn't dim his light just to fit in. He doesn't trade his principles for a pat on the back. He stands tall, grounded in who he is. And that strength, that quiet, unshakable confidence, it gets noticed. Because when you stop chasing, you become the man who's chosen. When you stop explaining yourself, you become the man who's respected. And when you no longer need someone to like you, you become the man who's admired. That's real power, not arrogance, not ego, just calm, unwavering belief in your own worth. The kind of belief that makes people stop, look, and want to know who you are. So if you've spent your life chasing approval, stop. Stop seeking attention. Stop bending your standards. Stop shrinking yourself just to feel accepted. Instead, ask yourself one question. Am I living in a way that makes me proud? Because when your focus shifts, when you commit to becoming a man of integrity, strength, and purpose, the need for validation fades, and the moment you stop needing approval, that's when you start to command it. 2. Raising your standards with confidence. When you stop chasing approval, something powerful happens. Your mind clears. You're no longer desperate to be liked, so you stop shrinking and compromising just to keep people around. And in that clarity, your standards rise. Not out of arrogance, but out of self-respect. You stop tolerating people who drain your energy, the friends who always take but never give, the relationships that leave you feeling empty, the people who only show up when they need something. You see it all for what it is, noise, and you refuse to let that noise pull you off course. The same shift happens with women. You stop chasing those who bring nothing to your life, the ones who play games, the ones who expect you to prove your worth while offering nothing in return. You no longer waste time on shallow connections because you understand your time is too valuable to spend on anything that doesn't help you grow. Instead, you become deliberate, selective, powerful. You know exactly what you want. And more importantly, you know what you won't tolerate. That shift, it changes everything. Because when a man has clear standards, when he values himself enough to walk away from anyone who doesn't align, his entire presence shifts. He doesn't argue, he doesn't beg, he doesn't play games. Kwaai. Mastering emotional strength. When someone pulls away to test him, he doesn't chase. When someone disrespects him, he doesn't explain himself. He simply moves on, not with anger, not with bitterness, but with calm indifference, because he knows his value. And that is what makes him powerful. Most men are afraid to set standards. Why? Because they're afraid of being alone. They think, if I'm too strict, no one will stay. But here's the truth. When you raise your standards, when you hold firm to your values, people don't walk away. The wrong ones do. The selfish, the disrespectful, the ones who are never meant to stay in your life to begin with. But the right people, they step up. Because a man with standards, a man who carries himself with quiet, unwavering strength, commands respect without ever asking for it. Women sense it. They know when a man isn't desperate, when he's fully willing to walk away rather than compromise his integrity. And that's the kind of man they pursue. Because deep down, everyone respects the man who refuses to bend. So, if you've been shrinking yourself to fit in, if you've been tolerating people who drain you, if you've been chasing relationships that don't inspire you, stop. Raise your standards. Because when you start living like a man who truly values himself, when you stop accepting less than you deserve, you'll discover something powerful. You don't lose people. You just stop keeping the wrong ones. 4. Mastering emotional strength. Most men crumble under pressure. They react without thinking. They snap when tested. They panic when life stops going their way. Why? Because their emotions control them. Anger controls their words. Fear controls their decisions. Loneliness controls their relationships. But a man who has mastered solitude? He's different. He's faced his darkest thoughts. He's sat with them, wrestled with them, and conquered them. And because of that, he no longer reacts like a man at the mercy of his feelings. When someone tries to provoke him, he doesn't flinch. When a woman pulls away, he doesn't beg. When life throws chaos his way, he doesn't panic, because his strength doesn't come from the approval of others. It comes from within. And that kind of strength, it's rare, not because most men are weak, but because most men avoid the silence. They drown their fears in distractions. They bury their insecurities in relationships. They run from solitude because it forces them to confront what's broken inside. But the man who embraces that silence, he becomes stronger than anyone expects. He learns to pause before reacting, to think before speaking, to act with purpose instead of emotion. That's real power. And it's built in the quiet, in the stillness, where most men are too afraid to go. Mastering emotional strength. Continued. He learns to think before he speaks. He learns to walk away from disrespect, not out of fear, but out of power. And when you carry that kind of calm, that steady, unshakable presence, something shifts. People respect you. Women feel it instantly. The quiet strength of a man who isn't swayed by her moods, her tests, or her mind games. A man who doesn't chase, doesn't beg, doesn't need anything from her. Because he's already whole. Weak men crumble under pressure. They fold when tested. They trade their dignity for a moment of attention. But a man who has mastered his emotions, he becomes untouchable. No insult can break him. No manipulation can control him. No rejection can shake him. Because he's no longer fighting for approval. He's grounded in self-respect. And that's why emotional strength is the greatest power a man can have. Because once you master yourself, no one can take that power from you. So if you're feeling desperate, if your emotions have been running your life, step back. Step into the silence. Because the man who can face himself, the man who can walk through the fire of solitude without running, that man becomes a force nothing can shake. And when you reach that point, you won't just survive the storms of life. You'll command them. 4. Unlocking laser-sharp focus. Most men live in a state of constant distraction. Their minds bounce from craving to craving, scrolling endlessly, chasing attention, drowning in shallow conversations that lead nowhere. Not because they want to, but because they've forgotten what focus feels like. But the man who steps away from the chaos, the man who embraces solitude, he's different. When a man stops wasting energy on empty relationships, when he no longer pours time into meaningless connections, his mind sharpens like a blade. The fog lifts, his thoughts align, his priorities lock in. He's no longer asking, "What should I do?" because he already knows what matters. His mission, his growth, his purpose. While others scroll, he builds. While others chase, he trains. While others drift, he sharpens his edge. Day after day, brick by brick, he's stacking wins, creating a life of power and discipline. And here's the secret most never learn. When your focus locks in, when your mind is free from the noise, success doesn't just become possible, it becomes inevitable. Because in a world full of distraction, focus is a superpower. Unlocking laser-sharp focus continued. The man who can sit down alone and commit himself fully to his craft, his vision, his purpose, becomes unstoppable. This is why the man who embraces solitude rises faster than the rest. He's not wasting time chasing people who don't respect him. He's not distracted by shallow relationships that drain his energy. Every hour he once spent seeking approval, he now invests in mastering his skills. Every minute he once threw away on meaningless conversations, he now pours into building his body, his mind, his future. And when you stack those focused hours day after day, something powerful happens. You start to move differently. Your presence shifts. Your energy becomes undeniable. People begin to notice. Not because you're asking for their attention, but because you've become a man they can't ignore. Women feel it. They sense when a man is driven, when his focus is locked on something greater than fleeting pleasure. And suddenly, the same people who once overlooked you are drawn to you, not because you chase them, but because you've become a man who doesn't need them. That is the power of focus, the kind that only comes when you stop wasting your life on distractions and start building something real, So if you've been feeling lost, if you've been pouring time into things that don't matter, step back, step into the silence. Because the man who can sit alone, fully committed to his mission, doesn't need to chase success. Success chases him. 5. Choosing relationships on your terms. Most men don't choose their relationships. They fall into them. They settle. They accept less than they deserve. Why? Because they're afraid. Afraid of being alone. Afraid of rejection. Afraid they won't find someone better. And that fear, it makes them weak. They tolerate disrespect just to avoid being single. They compromise their values to feel accepted. They silence their voice just to keep the peace. But the man who has embraced solitude, he's different. He doesn't chase relationships. He chooses them deliberately, carefully, on his terms, because he's not looking for someone to complete him. He's already whole, and that's what separates the powerful few from the weak majority. The man who has spent time alone, refining his mind, sharpening his focus, building his mission, doesn't tolerate nonsense. He's seen what happens to men who trade their dignity just to hold on to someone who doesn't respect them, and he refuses to be that man. He knows his time is valuable. His energy is sacred. His presence is a privilege, not something to be handed out freely. Choosing relationships on your terms continued. If a woman brings drama instead of peace, he walks. If she demands he lower his standards, he leaves. Not with anger, not with resentment, but with calm, quiet indifference. Because the man who has mastered solitude doesn't fear being alone. He thrives in it. And here's a truth most men never realize. The moment you stop needing a relationship is the moment you become the kind of man women can't ignore. Because a man who isn't desperate commands respect. Women sense it instantly. When a man isn't swayed by games, when he doesn't cling, doesn't beg, doesn't lose himself just to keep her interested, that kind of presence is rare. Most men fold the moment she pulls away. They chase harder. They panic. They abandon their standards just to feel wanted. But the man who values himself, he doesn't flinch. He doesn't compromise. He understands that nothing is more attractive than a man who stands firm and walks away when his standards aren't met. Because he's not seeking love to fill a void. He's building a life so full, so rich, so grounded in purpose, that only the right woman will earn her place in it. And that's the difference. So if you're tired of chasing, if you've been lowering your standards just to be accepted, stop. Step back. Focus on becoming the man you were meant to be. Because the man who sharpens his discipline, who builds his mind, who finds peace in his own company, that man doesn't need a relationship. And that's exactly why women are drawn to him. Conclusion. Solitude is where strength is forged. Solitude isn't emptiness. It's where your strength is born. Every hour spent in silence sharpens your mind. Every moment alone strengthens your resolve. Every second you resist chasing what's easy is a second invested in building something unshakable, yourself. The longer you embrace solitude, the clearer your vision becomes. The stronger your mind grows, the more powerful your presence feels. And when you finally choose to let someone into your life, it won't be out of loneliness. It will be out of strength, out of choice, because by then you won't be looking to be completed. You'll already be whole. So don't fear the silence. Embrace it, because the man who can sit alone, calm, focused, disciplined, is the man no one can break. And when you reach that level, you don't just survive life's storms, you command them. Thanks for joining Stoic Tips today. Stay strong, stay grounded, and until next time, keep cultivating your inner strength. We'd love to hear your thoughts or suggestions for future topics. Drop a comment below, and we'll see you in the next video.